P3 Performance Strategy. The External Auditor's Report. The External Auditor's Report is a standardized document. Its wording is prescribed by the International Standards on Auditing published by the International Auditing and Assurance Standards Board. One of the standard setting boards operated by the IFAC. However, there are alternative wordings that can be used where the auditor is not satisfied. The External Auditor's Report is appropriate in circumstances where the underlying bookkeeping records have been identified and found to be an adequate basis for the preparation of financial statements, and the accounting policies and disclosures are satisfactory. If the work done by the internal auditor has some relevance to the external auditor's objectives, then the external auditor can rely on it to some extent, provided the work has been done to a satisfactory standard. The relationship between the internal and external audit is an important one, as the work of the internal auditor will be used by the external auditor in forming a view about the effectiveness of organizational control. The external auditor can rely on work done by the internal audit provided it meets the following criteria. The work done must be relevant to the objectives of the external auditor. For example, compliance testing of controls will be much more relevant than, say, investigations into the potential cost cutting. Repeat, the work done must be relevant to the objectives of the external auditor. For example, compliance testing of controls will be much more relevant than, say, investigations into the potential for cost cutting. The internal audit staff must be competent and proficient, training, qualifications, and others. There must be a good standard of supervision and review of internal audit working papers and files. Internal audit findings must be supported by appropriate evidence and testing, and internal audit reports should tend to bear out the external auditor's findings on areas of overlap. The role of internal audit is to understand the key risks of the organization and to examine and evaluate the adequacy and effectiveness of the system of risk management and internal control in the organization. The role of internal audit is to understand the key risks of the organization and to examine and evaluate the adequacy and effectiveness of the system of risk management and internal control in the organization, and to examine and evaluate the adequacy and effectiveness of the system of risk management and internal control in the organization. Risk management is the act or practice of dealing with risk. It includes risk management is the act or practice of dealing with risk. It includes planning for risk, assessing, identifying and analyzing risk areas, developing risk handling options, monitoring risks to determine how risks have changed, documenting the overall risk management program. Evaluation of risk management. When evaluating the system of risk management and internal control operated by management, the internal audit function performs many duties. understanding key business risks. 2. Reviewing internal controls. 3. Monitoring compliance. Monitoring compliance. Reviewing the means of safeguarding assets and other key resources. Appraising economy and efficiency. Reviewing operations or projects for consistency with objectives and goals. Repeat, reviewing operations or projects for consistency with objectives and goals. And lastly, monitoring all corrective action plans to ensure that management implement them promptly and effectively. Status and remit of internal audit. The status of internal audit is determined largely by the manner in which it is supervised. The internal audit manager should report to someone who has sufficient seniority to ensure that audit reports are studied and acted upon. The audit committee, if one exists, should be asked to supervise the activities of internal audit and to receive its reports on behalf of the board. The internal audit department's remit should be defined formally. The internal auditor's powers to claim access to information and documents should be defined in writing. The status of the internal audit department should also be enhanced if the board takes an active interest in the planning of internal audit activities and the review of the department's more significant findings. The status of the internal audit department will be enhanced if the board takes an active interest in the planning of internal audit activities and review of the department's more significant findings. Ensuring independence. Staff should be encouraged to inform their supervisors of any reasons why they should not be assigned to a particular investigation. Regular rotation of assignments reduces the risk of close friendships developing with staff in audit departments and also encourages a fresh approach. Audit staff should not have any operating responsibilities. The head of internal audit. Responsibilities of the head of internal audit. The head of internal audit should be appointed by the audit committee and be responsible for developing an annual audit plan based on an assessment of the significant risks to which the organization is exposed, submitting the plan to the audit committee for approval, implementing the agreed audit plan, maintaining a professional audit team with sufficient knowledge, skills, and experience to carry out the plan. The head of internal audit must be appointed by the audit committee and is responsible for developing an audit plan based on an assessment of the significant risks to which the organization is exposed. The three key roles of the duties of the head of internal audit is to develop an audit plan designed around the significant risks to which the organization is exposed, submitting this plan to the audit committee for approval, and then implementing the plan. That's the responsibilities of the head of internal audit. Also maintaining a professional team with sufficient knowledge, skills, and experience. Don't forget that the head of internal audit also reports to the audit committee. The internal audit process, systems-based auditing. What is systems-based auditing? Transaction-based auditing was a process that aimed to validate the accurate recording of transactions. This gave way to systems-based auditing, which is focused or which is concerned with the functioning of the accounting system rather than the accuracy of accounting records. Under the systems-based auditing approach, auditors and management identify all financial and non-financial auditable systems and processes. These are prioritized against risk assessments and resources needed to audit, and an audit frequency is determined. Under the systems-based auditing approach, auditors and management identify all financial and non-financial auditable systems and processes. These are prioritized against risk assessments and the resources needed to audit, and an audit frequency is determined. For each system or process, the auditor identifies the objective of the system or process, identifies the prescribed procedures to achieve the system objective and corporate objectives, identifies the risk to the achievement of objectives,